In the heart of New York City stood a glass tower that seemed to touch the clouds, the Falcon residence. Inside lived billionaire Alexander Falcon, a man whose name was synonymous with power, innovation, and ruthless efficiency. Yet, despite all his wealth, one room in that towering mansion remained dark, silent, and heavy with sorrow, the room of his 8-year-old son, Ethan Falcon. Ethan was born with a rare psychological disorder. Doctors called it selective mutism with trauma association. The boy hadn't spoken a single word since his mother's death 3 years ago. His silence was deeper than just the absence of sound. It was a fortress around his wounded heart. Alexander had hired dozens of specialists, child psychologists, speech therapists, nannies from the most prestigious institutions. None lasted more than a few weeks. Ethan would either hide under his bed, stare blankly at the wall, or have silent meltdowns that broke even the toughest hearts. Every attempt to help him ended in tears, not from the boy, but from the adults who couldn't reach him. And so, Ethan lived in shadows, while his father drowned himself in work, believing money could one day buy a cure for silence. But fate, unpredictable and strange, was already preparing a miracle, not from another doctor or therapist, but from someone least expected. It was a cold Monday morning when Clara Moreno arrived at the Falcon mansion. She wasn't a nanny. She wasn't even applying for that job. She was just a maid. A simple, humble woman in her mid-30s, recently widowed, with soft brown eyes and a quiet strength that life had carved into her. The agency had sent her to clean. Nothing more. The head butler, Mr. Hargrove, explained the rules coldly. You will not enter the East Wing. That's Master Ethan's area. No one except the nannies and doctors are allowed. You clean, you stay quiet, and you leave before 6 p.m. Clara nodded politely. She had no intention of breaking any rule. But destiny has its own plans. On her third day, as she was vacuuming the hallway near the East Wing, she heard something, not a voice, but the faint sound of something falling. Then a soft whimper. She froze. Her instincts as a mother, though her own child had died years ago, made her follow the sound. She quietly pushed open the door. Inside, she found Ethan sitting on the floor, surrounded by torn papers, a broken crayon box, and a toppled water glass. His eyes were wide with panic. He didn't cry. He just looked trapped, like a bird inside an invisible cage. Clara didn't speak. She didn't rush to him either. She simply knelt down slowly, picked up the crayon box, and placed it upright. Then she started collecting the crayons, one by one, arranging them in perfect order. Ethan watched her silently. When the last crayon was in place, Clara smiled. A small, motherly smile that asked for nothing in return. Then she quietly left. She didn't tell anyone what happened. But the next morning, when she came back to clean the hall, she found something unusual, a small piece of paper taped to the door. On it, drawn with crayons, was a simple picture of a woman kneeling on the floor beside a crayon box. It was the first sign. Ethan had never drawn anyone before. And just like that, without words, a bond began to form, fragile, invisible, but real. That evening, Clara stayed a little longer, pretending to dust the nearby tables. She saw Ethan peeking from behind the curtains, watching her quietly. She smiled again. Not forced, not pitying, just warm. The next day, she left a small paper crane on the carpet near his door. When she came back the following morning, the crane was gone. In its place, there was a paper boat. She laughed softly to herself. For the first time in 3 years, someone had reached Ethan Falcon, not with therapy, not with science, but with kindness. And though neither of them knew it yet, this was only the beginning. Within 2 weeks, the entire mansion noticed subtle changes. Ethan started coming out of his room more often, still silent, but present. He followed Clara around like a small shadow, watching her clean, dust, and water the plants. He wouldn't let anyone else near, but somehow, he trusted her. The other staff whispered about it behind closed doors. How did she do it? Maybe the boy just likes her scent. Or maybe she's some kind of miracle worker. Clara ignored the talk. She wasn't trying to perform miracles. She was just being herself. Gentle, patient, real. Every morning, she left something small outside his door. A new origami figure, a drawing, a cookie with a smiley face. In return, Ethan began leaving her little gifts too, a feather, a marble, a folded note with scribbles that made no sense. But to her, they meant everything. Dash dash dash. One evening, as Clara was cleaning the library, she found Ethan sitting on the couch, holding a photo frame, his mother's picture. The air was heavy with sadness. Without asking, Clara sat beside him. She whispered softly, "She's beautiful." Ethan's hand trembled. He turned the photo toward her, as if to confirm that she really saw it. "Yes," Clara continued, her voice low and steady. "She must have loved you very much." Ethan looked at the photo for a long moment, then at Clara. His lips parted slightly, the first movement in years. But no sound came out. Still, it was progress. She placed her hand gently on his, not to comfort, but to remind him he wasn't alone. That night, Ethan didn't hide. He stayed in the living room, reading silently while Clara worked. From the upstairs balcony, Alexander Falcon watched in disbelief. For years, his son had shut himself off from everyone. Now, a maid, a simple, uneducated maid, had done what all professionals failed to achieve. He ordered Mr. Hargrove to investigate her background. He needed to know who this woman really was. Dash dash dash. When the report came, it shocked him. Clara Moreno had lost her husband and 5-year-old son in a car accident 5 years ago. Since then, she'd lived quietly, working small cleaning jobs. She'd never attended college, never trained in child care. She was, by all definitions, ordinary. But Alexander couldn't deny the extraordinary effect she had on Ethan. So, he did something he rarely did, he spoke to her. "Mrs. Moreno," he said one evening, standing in his study, "my son has responded to you. I don't understand why, but if you can help him, I'll pay you whatever you ask." Clara looked him straight in the eyes. "Mr. Falcon, you can't buy healing. You can only give it space to happen." Her words stung. Not because they were rude, but because they were true. For the first time in years, Alexander felt powerless. But as he watched his son sitting beside her later that night, silently drawing with crayons, he realized something. Perhaps power wasn't what Ethan needed. Perhaps love was. Dash dash dash. Weeks turned into months. Ethan began to smile. Faintly at first, then openly. He started humming when Clara sang softly while cleaning. He even began writing small words in his drawings. Tree, bird, mama. Then, one morning, it happened. Clara was sweeping the hall when she heard it, a voice. Small, shaky, but real. "Clara." She turned. Ethan stood there, holding a paper boat, his lips trembling. He had spoken. Tears filled her eyes as she knelt down. "Yes, sweetheart." He placed the boat in her hands. "For you." It was the first word he'd spoken in 3 years. And from that moment, the world changed, not just for Ethan, but for everyone who had forgotten what true healing looked like. The news spread through the Falcon mansion like wildfire. Ethan spoke. Even the usually stoic Mr. Hargrove was seen wiping his eyes. The doctors were astonished. The therapists called it an unprecedented breakthrough. But for Clara, it wasn't a miracle of science. It was the quiet result of love, patience, and presence. Ethan's recovery continued rapidly. Within weeks, he began to talk more, short sentences at first, then longer ones. He laughed when Clara told him bedtime stories, asked questions about her son in heaven, and even started going outside to play in the garden. Alexander, who had long buried his emotions under piles of work, began spending more time at home, watching in awe as his son came back to life. One evening, he found Ethan in the living room, drawing a family portrait, 3 figures holding hands, a man, a boy, and a woman with brown hair. "That's you, Dad," Ethan said softly, pointing at the man. Then at the woman, he smiled. "And that's Clara." Alexander's throat tightened. He realized how much she had become part of their lives, not as an employee, but as family. Dash dash dash. As weeks turned into months, Ethan joined school again. Teachers reported incredible progress. Not only did he talk, but he also comforted other children who felt lonely or afraid. His healing had given him empathy beyond his years. One day, after school, Alexander called Clara to his office. You've done something no one else could, he said sincerely. You brought my son back to me. I'll never be able to repay that. Clara smiled humbly. You don't need to, Mr. Falcon. Just keep being there for him. That's all he truly needs. Alexander nodded, his voice heavy. Would you consider staying? Not as staff, but as part of our family. Clara was speechless. Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. That evening, when Ethan saw her standing beside his father at dinner, he ran up and hugged her tightly. Don't ever leave, he whispered. She held him close. Never. Years later, when Ethan grew up to become a renowned child psychologist, he often told the story of the maid who healed him, not with medicine, but with love. She didn't fix me, he'd say in interviews. She reminded me that I wasn't broken. And in the Falcon household, one photograph always remained on the wall. A picture of Clara, Alexander, and Ethan standing together, smiling. Below it, engraved in gold, were the words, greater than, money builds empires. Love rebuilds hearts.